Uh, Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Here today with me is a friend all the way from England, James Butler, here to review the three ODI series between England and India. And also we have Guravir as well. I don't think he'll be staying all broadcasts. I think he will be just answering some questions. But first ODI started on the 12th of July. India won the toss and decided to bowl first. This was at the Oval. And not much to say about this, James. England were just really wasn't a contest. Bowled out in 25 overs, 110. No one really made any runs. Jos Buttler made 30. Pretty disappointing performance with the bat, James.
Yeah, I mean, if you put the first two ODIs together, they were the mirror image of each other, weren't they? England got hammered in the first one. India got hammered in the second one. And I tweeted after that I felt that, these are two very good sides. On their day, either can beat either. On their day, either can get battered by either. It's just whoever, one-day cricket to a large degree is which two or three personnel turn up and actually have a great game. Bumrah did it for India. Reece Topley did it for England. The ball ruled the bat in the first two matches. And I mean, as a spectacle, both matches weren't great because, you don't want one-sided games unless you're very blinkered in terms of who you're supporting. So, it was disappointing from that degree that it was 1-1 after two matches, but neither match was competitive.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the first match was not competitive at all. Trying to find some positives for England, you really can in this first ODI, because even with their bowling, India got there very comfortably. They didn't lose a wicket. Rohit Sharma 76 off 58 balls, 5 6 or 7 fours. Shikhar Dhawan, surprised I can pronounce his name correctly there. 30 run off 54 balls. Didn't have to do too much when Rohit Sharma's in that kind of form.
So when you're only chasing that total, you don't have to do too much full stop, do you?
No, exactly. I think just let a power hitter like Rohit just do all the work and just push the singles if you're the other batsman, as in Shikhar Dhawan did. So what are the positives? Well, it's not much positives after that kind of performance, but what exactly happened in that match, James? Why did England just didn't turn up? Just played back appalling cricket.
I think England are. It's a weird one because I think England are in transition, but without too much of a change in personnel. They're missing some of the key bowlers. Well, all teams have that problem sometimes. We saw Jasprit Bumrah having to sit out the final ODI. But I just think there's a kind of Owen Morgan's retirement as captain came before they were expecting it to come. In an ideal world, I think Owen Morgan would have led England's white ball team through to the T20 World Cup. Whatever happened in that, hopefully a trophy for England. But if not, he steps aside probably after that T20 World Cup and then they start again. But I think what's happened is Owen Morgan's form was so poor with the bat and his fitness is a bit dodgy as well, that after that Netherlands performance where he didn't get a single run, he saw the rest of that team batter the ball left, right and centre, albeit only against the Netherlands attack, and thought, I'm actually clogging up a place here which somebody else can have. Now, listening to Rob Key when he first took over as the director of cricket, he was talking about Matthew Mott coming in as the head coach for England's white ball side. Matthew Mott obviously has made his name in many ways, but most recently the Australian women's coach, and has done a fantastic job with them. Obviously got huge talent in that setup as well, but he's polished it up and made them pretty much unbeatable. So he comes into the men's England team with quite a good CV, and it was going to take him time. And I think what Rob Key was hoping was his adjustment period, Matthew Mott's adjustment period, would come underneath Owen Morgan's captaincy. So there'd be that continuity where Mott could get his feet under the table, work out where he was going with this side, and then ultimately when Morgan relinquished the crown, the throne or whatever, the captaincy, Matthew Mott would then be in a position to have worked out where he wants to take the team, and then under a new captain be ready to go. Obviously, Owen Morgan giving the captaincy up a little bit earlier meant that Josh Butler's been thrust into that role probably quicker than he thought he was going to be. Matthew Mott is having to kind of rearrange the team without Owen Morgan in the dressing room. And Owen Morgan, whatever you say about his batting, his captaincy, his leadership was second to none. So it's going to take a bit of time for England to just kind of work out where they're going now. And I think we saw in that first game, they were a little bit headless. In the second game, they fought back hard. And in the third game, it was a little bit more even, Stephen, but India always looked like they were going to win.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about one match when it's one-sided, but the test players that played in the ODI, in this ODI game, Ben Stokes, Joe Root, Johnny Bairstow, combined total of 7 runs. Were they just hangover from too much test cricket, or just one of those things that happens?
Yeah, I mean, Bairstow got a few runs in the second game, didn't he? But apart from that, he ducked in the third game as well. Root got a duck in the third game too. I mean, we're going to come on to Ben Stokes, I think, a little bit later, so I'll keep my powder dry a little bit on that subject. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be a little bit of a hangover. The test matches were quite intense for quite quickly. Took a lot of, or despite the fact that England had a huge amount of success in the test arena, winning all 4 matches, it still takes it out of you. You still have to get yourself up for each game, and the highs and everything take a bit of coming down from. And getting into that white ball series against India, it's always good to see India in this country. It's always good to play against India in white ball cricket. But I don't think ultimately, I mean, Gareth messaged me the other day halfway through the third match and said, who do you think is going to win? And I said, India. And then he started crowing a little bit. And I said, well, I don't really care, because it's a bilateral series, white ball cricket. It's entertainment, but it doesn't really ultimately mean a lot. It's all about preparing a side to, well, the T20s were about preparing for the World Cup coming up in the autumn. And the 50 over stuff is played so infrequently at the moment. Yeah, by the time we play it again, it'll be a completely different team.
Well, they're not actually. No, I'll wait till after we've done that series. Gorvi, anything you'd like to ask?
Yeah, just wanted to ask with James Butler that don't you think after the sudden retirement of the Ian Morgan, the batting firework was missing in this series?
I don't think that's because Owen Morgan's retired, because he wasn't scoring any runs. I mean, that's one of the main reasons he's retired, because he wasn't contributing at all. But definitely the batting's disappeared a little bit. The top order, which has always been England's major threat, when England have been dominant in white ball cricket, which has been quite a lot recently, they've gone out hard. As the opening pair's gone out hard, got off to a flying start in their power play, and then 3, 4, and 5 have come in and topped it up and scored. The totals have been big. Whereas in this series, it's tended to have been the top orders failed and had left it for the middle order to try and rebuild something, which isn't plan A from England by any means.
And just confirming, ODI series, India did win that by 10 wickets. We move on to the second ODI, which happened on the 14th of July. India won the toss again, decided to bowl first. That seemed like it'd be a deliberate tactic, James, because they also bowled in the third ODI as well first. So they tried to, because we know how good England are at chasing. But England did bat first, and they put a much better total on, probably still below par with ODI these days, way below par. But once again, the Joe Root, Johnny Bairstow and Ben Stokes, their 3 test players, failed to fire. You mentioned Johnny Bairstow did make some runs in this ODI. He did that. He made 38, but again, nowhere near enough. Having said that, England's lower order did turn up a little bit. Liam Livingstone made 33 off 33 balls. Moeen Ali seems to be a very handy player when it comes to batting in ODIs. Can get you a quick fire 30 or 40, which he did that, 47 runs. And David Willey 41 off 49 balls. So pleasing there for the lower order, James.
Yeah, like I say, the top orders failed and the lower orders had to bail them out, and did so in that second game, and gave them a total they could bowl at. And, try and defend, which ultimately they did do. I think in the bowling side of things on that day was fantastic. I mean, I'd like to talk a bit about Reece Topley, because Reece Topley is a massive unit, really tall, left armour. had incredible, I think 3 stress fractures in his back. He's been under the knife a few times. He's really struggled to make his career. I think he gave up red ball cricket altogether at one stage to concentrate on the short form to try and lengthen his career. Touch wood for Reece. He's back and he's fully fit and he's bowling like an absolute dream. Some of the balls he's bowled in the series, he's not taken wickets by having them all caught at deep mid wicket. He's actually bowled quality batsmen out, and the 6 for 24 that he got at Lords was absolutely top notch. Some of the best batsmen in the world. India have got some very, very fine white ball players. And Reece Topley ran through them as if they weren't there and added 3 more wickets in the third game as well, after taking a few in the first. So he's had a terrific series. And when, we talk about some of the bowlers that are out at the moment, Mark Wood's coming back. I saw some videos of him in club cricket the other day, bowling at some poor club batsmen, steaming in and bowling at 90 miles an hour at them, bless him. Getting their middle stumps uprooted. So Woody's back. Ollie Stone's coming back. Not heard a more recent update on Jofra Archer, but I think he was on his way back as well. But there's a number of quality bowlers in England's setup that have been missing for quite some time now. But it's given the likes of Reece Topley a chance to come in and show what they can do and have a proper run rather than coming in for one game and then disappearing. He's been able to have a full series in the ODIs and really has shown what he can do. Some brilliant bowling from him. David Willey scored a few with the bat, but I thought his bowling was a little bit disappointing through the series. But it has been an opportunity for somebody else's misfortune is somebody else's chance, isn't it, in cricket? And Reece Topley's taken his.
Well, he sure did in that second. I was going to say second. He's talking about Test match, but in England's bowling innings, as he said, he took 6 for 24. It was absolutely fantastic. India never really got started. Rohit Sharma, who made that 70 in the first game, got a duck. Shikhar Dhawan didn't get many at all, only 9. Virat Kohli failed, nothing new there. But it was the lower order, just like England's lower order, James. Yadav, 27 off 29 balls. Hardik Pandya, 29 runs off 44. Jadeja, 29 runs. Mohammad Shami, 23 runs. So once again, it was a lower order, just like England's lower order, that had to bail them out. Unfortunately, James, this was pretty much a one-way game. They end up losing by 100 runs.
Yeah, and like I say, it's disappointing. I think the first 2 games of quite a high-profile series were so one-sided, over very quickly, really. Far quicker than an ODI should be over. And as you say, the Indian lower order did come to their rescue a little bit, but still got nowhere near. So 2 very one-sided matches, and it's probably a lot easier, isn't it, to come out when the game is up and just have a bit of a swing and to just bat normally and to see what you can do rather than be in a pressure situation where you know exactly what you need and you're still in the game. So I don't think you can read too much into that. It was 1-1 after 2 matches, and both sides had their moments. Both sides had been pretty poor at times too.
This match was played at Lords. Reece Topley won the man of the match in the first game. Jasprit Bumrah won the man of the match in the first game. We move on to the third game. This week we're going to have a 20-minute show, James. Luckily, this was competitive.
Plenty to say yet. Get through these scorecards.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, it is one-sided because we can't talk about it much. However, we can talk a lot about this match. This was a very competitive match. This happened on the 17th of July at Old Trafford. India won the toss and decided to bowl first. Now, as I just said, it seemed there was a deliberate plan by India not letting England chase because they do that so well. We know they do that so well under this Baz ball situation. England's
This is mock ball now. It's not Baz ball.
Yeah.
Different coaches.
Mock ball, yes. Once again, England failed to fire. Their Test players really did nothing. Joe Root, Johnny Bairstow got the pair, the Ducks. Ben Stokes, 27. However, Jason Roy, who's had a poor series, did well in the third ODI, making 41 off 31 balls. Again, the lower.
I was watching Jason Roy closely, and he got 41 runs, and a few good shots in there, but he could have been out quite a lot of times. Jason Roy is not in top gear at all at the moment.
No, I think Stark could have ruined his career going back to the Ashes. Why he was picked, James, I'll never know. But once again, the lower order had to bail out England again. Ben Stokes finally showed up with some runs, 27 off 29, but Jos Buttler showed his why he's the best ODI player in the planet. I think there's no argument there. He got 60 runs. Moeen Ali, once again, 34. Liam Livingstone, 27. David Willey, 18. And Craig Overton smashed the butt around, getting 32 and made it a somewhat competitive score of 260, James. Or 259, exactly.
They didn't see the 50 overs out, though, Lucas.
Yeah.
And you reel off those scores there, but each of those batsmen could have gone on and could have made a bigger contribution. Even Butler, who was the had the best score. They got out at just the wrong time, and I thought all the way through that third ODI that despite the fact that England did rebuild and maybe sometimes got themselves back up to even Stevens in terms of the match context, as soon as they did that, they lost a couple of quick wickets and were all of a sudden then trying to rebuild again. There were so many rebuilding jobs going on in that England innings because they'd lost early wickets, and every time they lost another wicket, they were then back up with the backs against the wall. They were never really able to open the shoulders and really hit to a big total. I thought the wicket was a little bit too paced at times. There was a little bit in there for the bowlers as well, but it was a decent batting track. And I think England, the 259 they scored in total would have been very disappointing to them. At one stage, they were certainly on, it was weird because the actual total, as you saw the total mounting, it was on course for sort of 320, 340 at one stage. But the wickets that had fallen, anybody that's watched a load of cricket knows that the wickets that had fallen were going to, haul them back in. And, another couple of wickets that fell suddenly hauls that ceiling of the total down and ended up coming all the way down to 259, which to me was never going to be enough.
So India started their chase and they got off to a very poor start, James. They lost 3 for 38. And you're thinking, well, geez, England are going to do this with ease here. Unfortunately, Richard Punt had something to say about that, smacking 125, 113 balls, 16 fours, only 2 sixes, which is surprising. Richard Punt. Literally, that would be the other way around. And Hardik Pandya, 70 run, and they got home pretty easily, James, despite being in early trouble.
The only time I thought England were ahead in the match was when they'd taken 3 and 4 wickets in that innings, because they were very much in the game at that stage. Yep. Jos Buttler missed a stumping of Rishabh Pant fairly early, which proved to be probably the decisive moment in the match, because Rishabh Pant does not usually give too many other chances, and he basically just put his foot down. Batted very sensibly, actually, Rishabh Pant for him. Came in and batted within himself initially, stroked the ball around on the floor. You commented on the fact there weren't many sixes in his innings. He kept it on the ground and batted forcefully and aggressively, but batted along the floor. Obviously, if you bat along the floor, it takes out one of the most common modes of dismissal, because the catch is probably the most common form of dismissal in a one-day game. So I thought he batted very sensibly and maturely. And Hardik Pandya was brilliant. His technique is tremendous. Plays very straight, has got long levers, can play the aggressive shots, can play the classic shots. And that partnership between those two started off fairly conservatively, but gradually gathered momentum. And by the time Hardik was out, they'd added a lot of runs, and England were out of the game by then.
So India win the series 2-1. How did you find Craig Overton's and Braden Carr's bowling performance? Hopefully I got that right.
Braden Carr's. Craig Overton's a cricketer that underwhelms me every time I see him, to be honest. At county level, in county championship cricket on certain decks, he's very potent. But you put him in an England shirt, I don't think he's ever quite really lived up to this county form. And Braden Carr, I think, has got a little bit about him. He's got a bit of pace. And I can see why they're picking him. But I think if everything else was equal and we'd got a full quota of English pacemen available, I don't think Craig Overton would be anywhere near that one-day international team. But he's a good, honest cricketer. But I don't, and I've got nothing against him really. But I just don't see it myself in terms of England colours for Craig Overton. And like I say, with the likes of Mark Wood and a few others coming back into the fray, Sam Curran's had some good white ball form for Surrey. So there's a few out there that are kind of knocking on the door of that first 11. And although it's very hard to get in as a batsman, it's actually probably very easy to get in as a bowler these days. Adil Rashid was missing through the series because he was on a pilgrimage, a Muslim pilgrimage, and they missed him. Because he's just a leg spinner that in white ball cricket provides that control and always seems to take wickets. So it's the miss rash no end. But yeah, from a bowling perspective, I thought England were a little bit toothless at times in the series. Reece Topley apart. Just reiterate, Reece Topley got his chance and took it. He was terrific.
How did you see the bowling performance from Moeen Ali? He did swing the bat a bit, made some runs, but how did you think of his bowling?
I like Moeen. In the third match, he provided a bit of control. When you suddenly get Rishabh Pant and Hardik Pandya are the two batsmen that can take anybody down. Shane Warne in his pomp, Rishabh Pant would fancy his chances. So Moeen Ali, I thought bowled good line, good length. I mean, with the spinner, I think in one-day cricket, it's the length more than the line. You've got to get that length, which doesn't allow a batsman just to comfortably get it in the slot, but is a bit, but not too short, so they can just sit back and whack it. So somewhere in between is perfect. And Moeen Ali gets a little bit of drift. There was a little bit of turn for him, and I thought he bowled quite nicely.
Why didn't Ben Stokes bowl overs in the third ODI? He only bowled 2 overs.
I don't think Ben Stokes is fully fit at the moment. I was watching him quite closely in that match at Old Trafford, and he was limping around. He also went to feel the ball towards the boundary edge and slid, and was flexing his left knee after that as well, with a bit of a pained expression on his face. I don't think Ben Stokes is ever 100% fit, but obviously when he's 90% fit, he's better than most. But at the moment, I think he's a little bit below that. Obviously, we saw his announcement. We'll come on to that in a second. We saw his announcement today.
Yeah.
And it doesn't surprise me at all, because he's a guy that is kind of like bandaging himself together and to try and keep himself going. And something's got to give ultimately.
So the man of the match in that third ODI was Rishabh Pant, rightly so. Player of the series was...
you say that, but I would have given it to Hardik. Hardik took 4 wickets in England's innings, and his innings with the bat as well. As an all-round performance in an ODI, you don't get too much better than that.
Well, you might be happy with this. He was the player of the series. And Gourvi, anything to comment on that, on his performance through the series? Okay, maybe not. Right. Could there have been an argument for Ben Stokes to captain this series?
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
Why would you want him to captain?
Well, I just thought since he's the captain of the Test team, you would think.
The whole point of what they did was to try and split the roles, to avoid overloads and overkill and too much. And we've seen Ben Stokes retiring from white ball cricket today, so it would have been a fairly short-lived appointment, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Before we get into that, I want to ask. Yeah, go ahead, Gourvi.
Just wanted to ask about Jos Buttler captaincy. How good he was, how he need to improve going forward, because he will be taking forward to this England team to the T20 World Cup. What was missing? And obviously, James knows better than anybody else. So, James, go ahead.
I thought with Jos Buttler's captaincy, it seemed that when there's been talk about Owen Morgan and when he was going to go for some time, because he was always going to finish at some stage. And it was always that Jos Buttler was his vice captain, and there was hardly any discussion about who was going to take over from him. It always seemed to be that it was going to be Jos that took it over. I'm really not sure it's the right move. I think Jos Buttler is arguably the best white ball cricketer in the world at the moment. I think he is an incredible batsman. When he gets going, he can basically pummel any attack on the globe, on pretty much any surface. He is so important to that England white ball setup, both T20 and ODI. So you need him happy, you need him firing, you need him eager and keen and 100% concentrated on his game. And there was I mentioned before, the Rishabh Pant missed stumping. it wasn't an easy chance, but he didn't even get his gloves to it. And that's because, in my view, that's because his mind is full of captaincy, field placings, which bowlers have got, how many overs left, what do I do next? Oh, is he going to hit leg side? Is he going to hit offside? How do I plug that gap? All of those things that go through a captain's mind are going through Josh Butler's mind. And I think at times, as a keeper, he forgets to actually watch the ball. And it's understandable because you can only do so much. Men are notoriously bad at multitasking. So for me, Josh Butler, I want to see Josh Butler. People think I am anti Josh Butler, and I'm not at all. He's one of my favourite cricketers on the globe because he is brilliant. But I want to see Josh Butler playing at his very best, happy cricket, and absolutely butchering Australia left, right, and centre all the way around the park against the white ball, and not just Australia, but obviously mainly Australia, and being the best player he can be. I don't know if England have this tendency of making the best player the captain, and I don't think that, and other countries do the same thing, because that guy's cemented in the team, and he's got a long-term future in that side.
Yeah, Australia do that a lot. Yeah,
but it's not always the right choice, because captaincy, it doesn't, your instinct, your gut feeling, your tactics, how you plan, what you do. That isn't necessarily going to come out best from your best player. We saw Joe Root, at times struggle in the Test arena as captain. I wouldn't have said Owen Morgan was always the best player in England's white ball side when he was the captain, but he was the best captain available, for England. And I don't know whether Josh Butler is the right person. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he goes off and England win every match they play for the next 10 years. But I just think it's dangerous to saddle your best player with the stresses and strains and responsibilities of the captaincy, when he's got, he's a genuine all-rounder in that side. He keeps wicket and he bats. His runs are important, so it's dangerous to me that you're actually kind of almost making your best player wilt a little bit with the added pressure. And there have been signs, towards the end of Josh Butler's Test stint, when he knew that he wasn't performing well enough and he knew it wasn't going right. There was a certain look on his face and a bit of a slumped shoulders with Josh Butler that just looked like he wasn't enjoying it. And I've already started seeing that a little bit in the white ball arena in his, as captain. That isn't good. That isn't good for English cricket. I mean, if it had been up to me, there were two people that were the obvious candidates for me. Well, three, because Josh Butler was a candidate. But I
was going to bring this up,
Yeah, the other two would have been Moeen Ali. Moeen Ali's played a long time in white ball cricket. I think it's good that the white ball captain isn't involved in the Test team, and Moeen Ali no longer is involved in the Test team. Josh Butler's no longer involved in the Test team. But I think Moeen, talking to people at Worcestershire, whenever he's gone back to Captain Worcester in white ball stuff, he led them to T20 success at the T20 Blast. They said he's just really even keel, really encouraging, quite astute tactically, and it's a very positive influence as a captain. The other guy, it probably won't surprise you to hear, would be James Vince. Just led Hampshire to the T20 Blast success. I think he should be in that white ball side, and I think if you watch him in charge of that Hampshire team, he is in charge of that Hampshire team. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's ahead of the game, and he reads the game well. So those are those two. It would have been for me between Moeen Ali and James Vince. Maybe Moeen Ali is captain, James Vince is his vice captain, however you wanted to do it. But I think that would have then given Josh Butler the chance to disappear off into the shadows for a little bit, just enjoy his game, and then come back and play.
So basically, you are thinking that Josh Butler will not be able to enjoy his batting while he's captain. And the second thing, who was tactically good, Ian Morgan or Josh Butler? Because I think Ian Morgan was just quite a marvelous captain as a tactically.
Absolutely, and I've heard him on the commentary as well. He talks a lot of sense on the commentary. It's sometimes the best way of actually working out how a captain approaches the game is to listen to them jump into the commentary box and hear what they got to say about the matches. And he speaks a lot of sense in terms of his approach and how he viewed things and what he liked to see batsmen and bowlers do and what he didn't like to see them do. And at the moment there's no competition. I mean, Josh Butler, to be fair to him, he's never captained a side before. apart from when Owen Morgan has been injured and he's jumped up and done it. So he's it's difficult, isn't it? You basically in international cricket, you are being filmed in HD from every corner of the ground and then replayed in slow motion. Every mistake is magnified. And Joss Butler's got that to contend with at the moment. He's got people like me rabbiting away like this to contend with as well, which I'm sure he's delighted about. But I don't see it. I think there were better people for that role than Joss Butler.
Okay. As I just said, India win the series 2-1. Not long after that, the third ODI game, Ben Stokes made an Instagram post announcing his retirement from ODI cricket, which came at no surprise for me. I wish a couple of my test boys from Australia would do the same thing. But your reaction to that, James?
Doesn't surprise me at all. I don't think Ben Stokes, if everybody's fit, I don't think Ben Stokes gets into England's T20 international side anyway. His T20 record is actually the worst of the three formats. And despite the fact that he can hit a six and his bowling does whatever, I don't think he's never quite done it in T20 cricket, not on a consistent basis. And you need there are players that are a bit flash in the pan, and you get maybe one performance in four or something from them. A Glenn Maxwell kind of batter, But I think Ben Stokes' return is even less than that. So I don't think that's a massive loss for England to lose him out of the T20 international arena. Losing him a fully fit Ben Stokes from the ODIs is a loss, but because that's a little bit more towards the Test arena, isn't it? The ODI slightly longer, has a bit more of a narrative to it. But I think it's just a symptom at the moment that there is just too much cricket to play. He's obviously been appointed the Test captain, and he wants to give that 100% and be on it for that. So he wants to turn up to Test matches fighting fit, raring to go, full of beans, and with everything thought through. I think that's great. And if the ODI team suffers a little bit for that, then it can only be somebody prioritising Test cricket. I'll never criticise them for that.
No.
But I think, like
Neither will I.
I think it does just highlight how much we expect from these people. They are just flesh and blood. They are just human beings. And if they are trying to play all formats, plus a few of the T20 franchise competitions, we are flogging them to death for our own entertainment. We're asking an awful lot of them. And that is, ultimately human beings break sometimes, don't they?
That's Ben Stokes pulling up right now, James, outside of your apartment.
No, it's Josh Butler. Ben Stokes is behind him.
Nadeem said that.
I'm sorry, but I need to have the window open today because it is red hot in this country.
Yeah, we'll give that excuse. That's a good excuse. Fair enough. Nadeem said Root should also go for retiring ODI and T20 and play only Test matches. Do you agree with that, James?
I'd keep Root in the ODIs for now. Because he's the sort of batter that can go out there and knock it around and be quite useful for the rest of the team to bat around. There's a big argument to say that England's T20 side is better with a Joe Root in it, but his record in T20 is pretty good. But in the same way that Ben Stokes is having to kind of simplify his life and to shed a skin or two, Root hasn't played a T20 international for quite some time. And I don't necessarily see him getting back into that T20 side. It's whether he wants to carry on playing ODIs or not. And I think for the foreseeable, he will do.
You just mentioned James Vince earlier. Is this a good opportunity for James Vince to come in to replace Ben Stokes, or would they need another all-rounder to replace him?
We shouldn't need an opportunity to get James Vince in any of those sides. He should be in there anyway.
Yep. So you would. Ben Stokes is gone. You would replace him with James Vince.
There's a few in that in the pecking order. Phil Salt's done a good job.
Yeah, good opener
coming in and scored runs against Netherlands and did okay against India. You've got in the T20 that it was you've got Harry Brook, who hasn't really cracked it yet in terms of international runs, but he's definitely got it and he will do. Liam Livingstone's a little bit hit and miss as well, to be honest, but he will get there. and James Vince is there too. So there's a number. If you look at, I think you probably got to look at it as a squad kind of setup these days rather than an 11. For me, James Vince would be in that 11, and I think it actually wouldn't be a bad thing for Josh Butler, because I mean, for whatever I say, Josh Butler is going to be the white ball captain for the next 2 or 3 years, and having somebody like James Vince in the same side as him can only help him.
I wasn't going to mention this name because the person who suggests me to say this has been giving me shit for a long time. But Ben Duckett did make some runs in the South Africa A side and is a very good player of white ball cricket.
Yeah, I like Ben. He's a big hitter. He's only from a distance, he only looks half the size of any other player, but he's got some big muscles on him and a big bat, and he likes to crack the ball about. And that's in all formats of the game. Quite technically decent as well in red ball.
Yes, yeah.
Ever since he poured that point over James Anderson, though, England don't seem to have forgiven him. And that he generally doesn't seem to have got back into favour. But there's definitely scope for Ben Duckett to be in an England shirt again. I think he's a good player.
I think he's he's top 5 for runs in the County Shield. So as you just said, his red ball is also very good.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player. In all formats. We're increasingly seeing people not play all formats, or certainly not being picked by England for all formats. But I think he's another example. I often say this to you, but he's another example of a player that's had an experience, made a bit of a mess of it by pouring a beer over Jimmy Anderson and upsetting a few people. And he'll know that. He's more mature now than he was then, you'd hope. And he's probably a better player now than he was then. And I think sometimes you're always looking for the next in line. You kind of have this production line of international players, and right, we're chucking him away. Who's next? Chucking him away. Who's next? And we forget to actually go back to some of the ones we've chucked away. And I think sometimes they are better than the next in line because they've been there. They've seen what they need to do. They know what the standard is that is required. They know what the disappointment feels like. They've hopefully gone away and made themselves better people and players off the back of that bad experience, and they could come back in and be better for it.
Yeah, and just on Ben Duckett, he's actually played Test matches for England, but unfortunately he started in a very horrible place in India where it's not really the greatest idea to make your debut, James. That's gone against him.
That tour, didn't he, where India and Bangladesh were both involved, and Bangladesh was turning square. And India is always tough for English batsmen to go to, and no matter how much you train in the nets against Merlin, the spin machine, it doesn't replicate match situations when people are breathing down your neck from short leg and all the rest of it. And like Labuschagne's found with his little carpet full of metal, you can't always replicate what it would be like. So I think, you sometimes have to look at that, in the same way as when you select somebody, where do they score their runs? Sometimes a 30 is more important than 150 because it's the context of those runs in the match situation and the pressure that was on that player when they ground out that 30 and kept their side in the match or something like that. You need, and equally you need to look at where Ben Duckett failed, and as you said, it was away trips to 2 of the toughest places England ever go to.
Well, that's enough of Nottingham players. Move to a York.
I'll tell you another one I like from Ben Slater. Hardly ever
the
gets
opener.
mentioned.
The opener,
gets mentions as slats. Played for Derbyshire, terrific lad. And he's doing all right for Notts. He seems to be kind of in the shadow of Hasib Hamid there these days, but he's a good player. And he plays got decent technique, and I don't know why more people don't mention him when they talk about future England teams. He's one of these players where there's always going to be 2 or 3 ahead of him, it seems. But sometimes that player that's a little bit further back in the queue might be worth a look at.
I think, is it unfair to criticise these players, whether they're bowlers or batsmen? Nottingham is in Div 2. Is that unfair to say, oh, well, he's only doing against Div 2, or he's only taking wickets against Div 2 opposition? Is that a bit unfair?
I can see why it's said, but there's some blooming good bowlers in Div 2, because it's not the way the county setup is. some players do transfer to go to a test playing ground where they know they're going to get the majority of their cricket in the top divisions of all the competitions and have more chance of winning silverware. And you can understand why they do that. But equally, plenty of players stay with their Div 2 sides, and there are test match grounds in Div 2, and they sign overseas players that are blooming good to try and supplement the weaknesses. So there's no such things as easy runs in county cricket. People are really dismissive of the county game and say the standard is low and all this kind of stuff. I'd love to see them in front of some of the bowling and see if they could keep their wicket.
Well, Nottingham's in Div 2 and they play at Trent Bridge, so that's a test match venue. So there you go. Moving away from Nottingham to Yorkshire. Johnny Bairstow, not the greatest ODI series. Where do you see him? Who I think is just as important as Jos Buttler in the white ball game.
Absolutely, he is one of the few players in the world game at the moment that are actually dominating in all formats. As you say, he's had a poor series against India, but South Africa are coming up now. ODI series and a T20 series against the South Africans before the test matches start. And he had a little bit of a break after the test matches. He missed the T20s. And I mean, he's just in tremendous form. I mean, if you judge somebody on the confidence that must be running through them, his confidence must be absolutely sky high after the test successes. And just because you get a good ball off a Mohammed Shami or something, or a Mohammed Siraj in the early overs of an ODI, that happens sometimes, doesn't it? You just get a couple of matches where you go through and don't really get anything because you get a good one early.
Yeah. As you mentioned, they're playing South Africa. They're playing South Africa tonight, 9:30 p.m. No, they're not playing at 9:30 p.m. That's just Australian time. They won't be playing at 9:30. They do play South Africa. Yeah, they today my time because it is past midnight. But they will not be playing at 9:30 p.m. Trust me. They do play South Africa. Any changes to the England team that they'll go? Will they play a serious team? Will they try to bleed in some young youth? What do you see happening with that series?
As far as I know, they've kept the same squad, haven't they? I think they've kept the same squad that they've had together for the ODI. Against,
yes, they have actually.
India.
They have included Ben Stokes, but
Ben Stokes says that he's giving up after one of these games. I think against South Africa, he's going to have one more game to say goodbye, and that's it.
There is one bowler I do want to talk about. That's Sam Curran. Now he's been injured recently. Where do you see him as a player for England in the white ball or red ball?
I really like Sam Curran.
Yeah.
I really like him. Now he can bat, he can bowl. He does rely a little bit on movement in the air, but then so do many bowlers. Hasn't got the pace. Yeah, he's a bowler that could definitely do with a yard more pace. But then so could many bowlers.
Yes.
And I always feel a bit bad saying this because I really do like him. Yeah. If I was to pick a squad of 16 for any of the three formats for England, he would be in each of the three of the 16s. I don't know whether he'd make any of the 11s. He's just, for me, he's just outside of each of the best 11s. So that shows you that I rate him. It's just, I don't necessarily think I rate him quite highly enough. Maybe with Stokes coming out of the ODI side, that might be Curran's route into that side to play that part. Yeah,
he can bat as well. He can hit a 30 or 40.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely, he can definitely hold a bat. In fact, many people think his batting's the best of his, the better of the two suits that he has. And it may be that, Stokes coming out of that ODI side gives him that route in so he can play that all-rounder role.
So, as we said, we are playing South Africa. Amazingly, we mentioned the Bazball, and that's happened to a certain extent with the Lions tour. The Lions played South Africa recently, one of the games, and South Africa made, I think, 360. And the Lions A team chased that down very easily, James. It ran about 35 overs. Ben Ducker was actually playing in that game. I think he made a 60-odd. Just your comment on that. It seems to be infectious, this Bazball. Well, chasing 360 in 30 overs, James. That's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, Brendan McCullum has said he didn't like the term Bazball, thinks he's a bit silly, and I agree with him actually. It's a kind of devalues the kind of ethos that he's trying to build a little bit. But what Ben Stokes has said is that he wants to see players with England aspirations playing with that kind of mindset. So I don't think there's any coincidence that players that are on the periphery are trying to show what they can do to fit into that side. But equally, I don't think here comes Ben Stokes. I don't think that having somebody certainly in the Test arena anyway. I think that there's more. I mean, Matthew Mott's obviously in charge of the white ball team. Whether he wants to go Bazball or Mothballs or however he wants to do it, I don't know. But there's more. I can see the more merit, certainly in T20, of going all out attack all the way through the 20 overs. I think there is a need to have a couple of people showing a little bit of restraint in the Test arena and being a little bit more cautious, shall we say, and Alex Lees or a Joe Root to just even things out a little bit, because not everybody can just go out and swing. Because we're going to end up with 2-day Test matches, aren't we? But and still with 2,000 runs scored or something ridiculous. But so I don't know how that'll go. But yeah, definitely, I think a lot of people on the edges of the England side are trying to show they can play that way.
What's your prediction for the ODI series with South Africa?
I think South Africa going to be quite a test. Actually, I like the South African side. They are resurgent a little bit. I think in white ball cricket they've got a lot of exciting players, and I think the way I like a series like this, where I thought the Indian bit was the wrong way around. I like the white ball leading into the Test series, so we finish on the tests. And so this is kind of like the starter for the Test to come a little bit, and obviously the personnel will change to some degree, but I think it's going to be quite close again, and I don't know how I see it really. I mean, to be honest, I don't care what the result is. I just want to see some good cricket played. If South Africa win 3-0, if it's great cricket and the close games, that's great. If it's the other way around and the close games, it's great. So I'm just looking to see individuals and looking to see some people stick their hands up in the same way that Reece Topley has done in the recent games. I'd like to see a few others do that. Like a Harry Brook or a few, somebody else actually come into the England side, get his chance and say, this is what I can do, guys. This is where you need to pick me for the next 10 years. Reece Topley, has obviously done something similar, taking the best figures ever taken by an English bowler, for goodness sake. So you can't do much more than that. So it'd be nice to see a Harry Brook or a Phil Salt or somebody else, a Bryden Cast or something, come into the team and actually really put in some top-notch performances to show that they are long-term projects.
And just on South Africa, they have pulled out of their ODI series against Australia early next year for some weird. Well, actually, I know the reason. So they can play the Big Bash League. Your thoughts on that?
Well, there was an announcement, wasn't there? They've opened the window for the IPL and Australia and England and stuff for kind of clearing ways around the 100 and the Big Bash, because they want to give those tournaments prominence. And I mean, I can understand why to a small degree, because obviously they're important for the coffers and stuff like that. But I think if you start to then further sideline in this country the county game, if that has the repercussions of sidelining international matches, for me, internationals that's the pinnacle. The pinnacle is not playing. I mean, if I had loads of talent, which I haven't, as everybody can see, but if I had loads of talent, the pinnacle for me as a cricketer, it wouldn't be playing for Yorkshire or playing for the Mumbai Indians or getting to get a gig with the Sydney Sixers. It would be playing for England. And the pinnacle would be trying to get as many caps as I possibly could for my country, and whether that's Test, T20s, whatever your format, however you are good and wherever you can contribute, trying to get as many caps as you possibly can. Now, of course, I'd want to play for my county. I'd want to play as many games for Yorkshire as I possibly could as well, because that would be important for me. And then if there are any bits left in the calendar, I'd then maybe say, Lucas, can I come and stay with you because I'm playing for the Perth Scorchers next week or something like that. And you'd fit maybe a couple of opportunities like that in. But at the moment, I think cricketers' mindsets are it's like dollar signs going off in their eyes. And they are prioritizing a lucrative IPL deal over even having an international career.
But, yeah.
And that is where we're getting a little bit skewed. Now, obviously, I mean, I had Vic Marks on my podcast just recently, and he talks about Will Smeed, the Somerset opener, who at that site, he played in the Lions games that you just mentioned. But before then, he'd never played a 50-over match. I don't think he's played a first-class match. But he's played T20 and he's made a massive name for himself in T20. You can guarantee that whether it's the Pakistan Super League or the Big Bash, somebody's going to pick him up and give him a lot of money to do it, because he's shown that he can smack a big ball and he can be fairly consistent opening the batting in T20 cricket. Now, I would hope if I was Will Smeed, I'd still want to play red ball cricket. I'd still want to do that, but that's me. I'm 80 years older than Will Smeed.
I agree.
You know, if Will Smeed sees his route through the game as being somebody that plays T20 predominantly and makes a hell of a lot of money, and maybe plays for England in T20s and plays in World Cups and IPLs and all the rest of it, and he sees that his future, who am I to say that's wrong?
But at the same time, it's like a double-edged sword. So if you say, well, we'll stuff the money, people are going to say, oh, you're crazy. How dare you turn that down such money? But then again, you take the money, you said, oh, you don't care about cricket, you're just turning into a gun for hire merchant. You know, it's a double-edged sword with that.
I mean, look at Kieran Pollard.
Personally, I if the Redbacks Saka came to me and said, if you want to play Big Bash for a season or play the Sheffield Shield, I'm taking the Sheffield Shield all day, every day, not even thinking about that. But that's just me. But go ahead with Kieran Pollard.
I mean, people like Kieran Pollard, you've got at the moment Tim David. I think he's qualified for Australia, isn't he? Born in Singapore, but qualified to play for Australia. He massive unit, can hit the ball from town to town. He's not interested in playing red ball cricket. He knows he can have a career of 10 years. He can play IPL, he can play Big Bash, he can come and play the T20 Blast, he can play Caribbean Premier League, get a gig in the 100. And if you add all of those contracts together, plus the endorsements, plus everything else around the edges of that, he is going to be richer than Joe Root. So why would you want to go through the hassle of playing a 5-day match and putting your body through all of that when you can play 20 overs and go home early? So I can see it. I can see why people are doing that. I just wish we could actually just tilt the landscape a little bit so that we could actually get a little bit more balance in there. I mean, if Tim David only ever wants to play white ball cricket, that's up to him. But if we could actually just try and tilt the landscape of the game so that it wasn't all about the sounds of cash registers and tills, and it wasn't all about so there was, people could see a route through where they could play a little bit of both. And it goes back to why Ben Stokes is retired. There's too much cricket, and people only have so many miles in their legs. You know, their careers are only so long. They only have so much effort they can give. They only, and it's potentially a short career. There's all of those little caveats to this. And if you're asking them to play pretty much every day, and what people don't see, because somebody came back at me when I tweeted actually earlier on that Ben Stokes was another example, there was too much cricket, and somebody came back, I can't remember the words, but it was something along the lines of, that was a bit rich. What about the working man, manual labourer that's working 5 days a week, only gets weekends off, and he's saying that some highly paid cricketers get playing too much cricket? Now, obviously, that's an easy hit back, but I replied with something like that. Well, the manual labourer doesn't have 24 cameras on his every move, with people in the studio, discussing whether he's laid that brick right or whether he's carried that, whatever right. There's far less intensity on something like that. And these are guys that are talented. These are guys that are the best in the world at what they do. And so if we flog them to death, I mean, what we're actually doing is we're devaluing the product, because for people like us who want to watch a cricket match and want to see the best players giving their best, their 100% best, but we're actually asking them to play pretty much every day of the year. Because what people like that don't see, the one that comes back with the 5 days a week gets weekends off, cricketers probably don't even get weekends off. No, because they're playing a game, and then they're traveling the next day, they're training the next day, then they're playing another game. There are no days off for those guys. The manual labourer, he gets the weekend off. The cricketers don't. They're playing at the weekend. So you've got to, if you want the best from these people, these players that we're watching and hoping are going to entertain us, we've got to at least let them breathe a little bit.
Well, as you mentioned, Zach Crawley just played Test cricket. He doesn't get a rest. He's gone back to county cricket for Surrey. And I've heard he hasn't been doing that well since he has joined James.
I'll tell you a story. When I was, I've said this before on my podcast, but when I was covering Yorkshire home and away, we had this trip where we went to Liverpool for 4 days for a county championship match. There was a day off the next day that was used to travel to Worcester and book into the hotel. I think the lads got there and had to train. I had to write a piece. Next day, you play Worcester. Then the day after that, we drove down to Taunton. So that was a travelling day. Everybody else from outside would see that as a day off, but we were travelling down the motorway to get to Taunton and book in. 4 days then in Taunton, watching Marcus Trescothick smashing the ball left, right, and centre. Day off the next day was travelling all the way along the south coast from Taunton to Hove, which is quite a long trek, to find the hotel in Brighton, try and get a good night's sleep, because then 4 days at Hove followed that. And then there was a day off after that, which was travelling back up to Yorkshire, which is a fair trek from Brighton. And then the day after that, the Yorkshire lads were practicing T20. The day after that, the T20 Blast started. So that was 17 days on the road. Day after that was a training day for the T20 Blast competition to get underway. And then there was hardly a breath all the way through the T20 Blast competition. So people from outside, they'll look at the fixture list and say, oh, Yorkshire got 2 days off there and got 1 day off there and they got 1 day. They're practicing, they're either travelling or training on those days. There is no escape from cricket. When you get into an English summer on the county schedule, there is hardly a day off if you're working in it. Hardly a day off at all. Those 2 years that I did home and away with Yorkshire, I maybe got 2 or 3 days at home where I wasn't doing anything. Apart from that, there was always something to do. And
well, it's even worse now with 100.
And so people from outside that look in and say, well, they've got all these days off here and there, so why are they moaning? They're not days off. You know, you're not getting the weekends where you're sitting at home with your wife and kids and or going to the beach and stuff. They're always doing something. We are actually draining these guys so that by the time we get to the end of the season, they can't possibly be at 100%. And we're wanting them, go out and entertain me, man. And why you played that stupid lazy shot for?
Yeah,
because he's knackered.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up because we're out of topic. Actually, no, I do want to actually discuss this with you. Australia are having a series against Zimbabwe, and I'm trying to be nice here. Cricket Australia, I don't care about that. That is the most pointless series known to man. So they're having 3 ODI series up in Townsville in August. All of those games start at 9:30 a.m. local time, 9:30 a.m. And Cricket Australia have pumped up to get bums on seats. Their test players, Steve Smith, Pat Cummins, David Warner, will all play in that series. God knows why. But to Cricket Australia, how about instead of playing these guys in these ridiculous, pointless ODI series, how about you get them to actually play some damn spin? That would be nice. I mentioned this with James last week. James might actually laugh at this, might find this funny. I mentioned this last time that I said I pleaded with Cricket Australia, do not bottle that second test match. And you did everything but listen to me. I don't care if you drew that series, if you batted 5 days, win that test series, I don't care how. And then you stinged up the joint. So forget about this.
Well played, Sri Lanka.
Yeah. Chris Silverwood finally beats Australia without being coach of England. That's what really got me going. But in all this nonsense Glenn Maxwell talk, he hasn't played.
What's wrong with playing Zimbabwe?
I've got nothing. There's nothing against Zimbabwe, but really, James, August, our winter, all games at 9:30 a.m.
What temperature will it be?
Now that's actually. It's played at the One Stadium. That will play up in Queensland, up in Cairns. So it will be about 25 to 30, high humidity.
You talk about your winter. That's hotter than our summer, apart from today.
That's just in Cairns. That's near.
If you've got the ability to play, if you got the weather and the ability to play, why not? Yeah. Give Zimbabwe a leg up. Zimbabwe hardly ever play anymore.
Well, I'll say this. I have nothing against Zimbabwe playing. I would have liked to see a test match in there. You're booking them for a 3 ODI series. Why not fit a test match? I have no problem with Australia. I have no problem with Australia playing in winter. There's plenty of stadiums. Now, obviously, they can't play in the eastern stadiums because of rugby codes, AFL codes, because their stadiums are booked. But places like Darwin, places like Cairns, which these games will be in, I've got no problem with that. But just the 3 ODI series, there's a zero care factor. I'm not going to. I don't think anyone's going to lose sleep if Australia lose this series. I know Zimbabwe are in transition mode. They've been having a hard time, but I don't think anyone's going to lose sleep. Let's say if Zimbabwe hammer Australia with a full Australian team, no one's going to lose sleep over that. And I just don't see.
I might do, because I might stay up and watch that if that happens.
Yeah. So fantastic. But anyway, that's just my point of view, James. I already lost the plot when they stinked up the joint against Sri Lanka, so thank you for that. Make sure it's other.
I did enjoy your little tweets.
Yeah, let's make
smile.
Yeah, let's make sure it's another 10 years before we go there as well. But the Ashes next year and then India. Well, I'd say let's cancel India and let's worry about the Ashes because we're no hope in hell in India. But
by that stage, Bazball will come and crush you in the Ashes.
Yeah, Bazball. Yeah. Well, Australia. Steve Smith laughed that off. Actually, he said that was a bit overrated. So I can't wait to see if England employ those tactics because they're whole different bowlers in New Zealand and South Africa and India. So I always say I can't wait for the Ashes, but I hope it was this year under this Bazball to crush any dreams of this England spirit of that they're back to Test cricket, but that won't happen. We have to wait a year for that. So I can't wait, James, for that.
I'll tell you what. I said to you before that there'll be times where Bazball falls flat on its face.
Yeah,
and they get smashed playing that kind of way, but it's worked so far.
It has worked so far. And like I said, we're 20 years since we haven't won in England, so fantastic. Just like Sri Lanka now is going to be 20 years coming up since we play there next. So fantastic. Anywhere where we don't have to travel, that would be great. James actually stood me up about that a couple of weeks ago. Maybe we should stay in Australia. I'm starting to agree with you, James, because it gets me angry.
You do generally, don't you? You didn't help anybody out during COVID.
No, we didn't. No, the hell with everybody. We didn't help Bangladesh. We postponed Afghanistan, South Africa.
Yeah. It was all you, wasn't it, during COVID?
Yeah, it seemed to that it was either England or bust. And we busted because we didn't win that series either. But anyway, James, thank you. Actually, I do want to. I spoke to you last week about this. I did actually want to talk to you about the tennis for a little bit.
You've said goodbye to me 4 times now.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Well, it's a very short show. But no, I did actually want to speak to you about the Wimbledon because I did wanted to show with you, but unfortunately we couldn't. Your thoughts on the 2 finals? Elena Rybakina, who is actually Russian under a Ukraine flag.
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan. Sorry, my bad. Kazakhstan, despite living in Russia, despite being in Russia until she was like 15 or something.
She's got Kaz next to her name, though, hasn't she?
Yeah, Kaz. Yes, plays Davis Cup for Kazakhstan, and Novak Djokovic defeating our very own Nick Kyrgios. Your thoughts on those finals, James?
Well, I thought Rybakina played really well, despite the fact that the BBC coverage seemed to want to call her Rybakina or something.
Yeah, right.
It
Yeah,
was almost like they wanted to try and make it sound not Russian.
Exactly.
I don't know why. But she was brilliant, and I really liked her attitude. She was just really enjoying it.
Yeah, she's very modest, isn't she?
Yeah, the interviews between sort of like the quarterfinal, semi-final, and final. I'm just going to go out there and enjoy it. I wasn't expecting to kind of win. I'm really looking forward to it. And she did. She just went out there and played a tennis, didn't she? She was terrific. And I really enjoyed, actually. I don't particularly like either Kyrgios or Djokovic. I don't particularly like either. But I actually really enjoyed that final. And I wouldn't have cared who won it. I was just hoping for a good final, and it was. Kyrgios is a bit of an idiot sometimes. But he plays some great tennis. Djokovic sort of almost sets himself up as some kind of moral compass because he's frightened to put an injection in his arm. But that all said, he's just a legendary player. And to see him get another, one closer again to Rafa Nadal, tremendous, wasn't it? And I just love Wimbledon. 2 weeks where wherever I can, I have it on the TV and watch it all the way through. And it's one of the. I mean, we just finished watching the Open Golf, which I'm really into as well. certain events during the summer in England where.
Oh, we can mention that as well. An Australian won that. We can mention that.
He's tremendous.
Yeah. Cameron Smith.
Needs to get his hair cut, doesn't he? But the I felt sorry for Rory, but Cam Smith was superb.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's things like that where you devote 4 days of your life to the Open Golf, you devote 2 weeks of your life to Wimbledon. Yeah, it's like a test match. 5 days of your life goes to the test match.
Yeah,
it fills the year, doesn't it? But yeah, once they finished, you kind of think, what do I do today? Because I've been watching Wimbledon for the last 2 weeks. Now there's no Wimbledon. What do I do now?
Exactly.
But we've got the T20 World Cup coming up in the autumn. Then we got the soccer, as you would call it, World Cup coming up in November, December. So there's plenty of sport to look forward to yet in 2022.
Well, Guravia, the boss, is now saying wrap up the show. Enough of this. So that's what we will do.
There are other sports, Gaurav. There are other sports.
Yeah.
Just because India can't play them.
It's not only about the India can't play them. It's what I am not able to understand what the hell is happening.
Well, India have a good tennis player, Sunny Mirza. She's very much well known in the tennis community.
Oh, there's been a gap. To be fair, there's been a couple of Indian. An Indian tennis player's never won a Grand Slam, though, have they?
No. They've won mixed doubles.
I have no idea about that.
Okay, he's hence wrap up the show.
Yeah, doubles players they do. India's football team though, Gareth, is that going to be one of the favourites for the World Cup?
I only watch cricket.
I'll let you go.
Well, it won't be the Socceroos. Trust me, we barely got there. Anyway, thank you, James, for joining. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Lucas. Cheers, Gareth.
Sorry, we had to cut the show short, but just the 2 ODIs messed up. They weren't that competitive, so thank you for that. Follow James on the Cricket Badger, 3 Point Spanish King for me, and Guravia, 123, whatever his Twitter handle is. I don't think that's his Twitter handle. And James, you'll be doing commentary for the WTA. What events will that be?
I'm on for Palermo with the next one. I think this week, Palermo. Looking forward.
Okay, that would be on the clay, I think.
Back on the hard surfaces, aren't they?
Oh, back on the hard, yes. Okay, so I'll look forward to watching that because I do like the WTA.
I think which days am I on this week? I can't remember now, but I've got a couple coming up later this week.
Well, I'll look out for your commentary on that one as well, James. See how you go, because I said to you last time on, I thought, I know that voice. Who the hell is that voice? James Butler. I couldn't believe it.
I really enjoy doing the tennis. I really like it.
Yeah, I sense the passion in it, James. I really sense the passion in it. But anyway, thank you all for joining. The boss has said wrap up, please. So thank you, James, for joining, and goodbye.